Hello and welcome to Pocket Potential. Our aim here is to help you to maximize your potential by taking small steps in the right direction. Now let's jump into the show. All right, welcome back. I'm your host, Paul Croswell, and I'm glad you're here. Today, I'm going to tell you how to stop complaining and start moving on in life. I'm going to tell you exactly how I do that. Now, before we jump into the episode, I want to let you know that I've just released my latest mental health guide. I'll include a link to the download page in the description of this episode, so be sure to look for that. I made this because a lot of people that I come across are held back by what I'm going to call minor mental health obstacles. These are things that are definitely not severe as far as mental health goes, but they're big enough to impact your day-to-day life. There are things that, they just impede or hinder your focus, they slow down your ability to be as productive as you know you can be and have been at times, and they simply keep you from functioning at your highest level. And really, who wants that? So, I've compiled a list of the 5 best ways to boost your mental health quickly and in a healthy and easy way. So, if you or someone you know could use something like this, be sure to, follow the link to the download or send it over to someone you know who you think can use it. It's completely free, so make the best use of that, you guys. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly how to stop complaining and start moving on in life, because here's the hard truth. Complaining feels productive. And so a lot of people find themselves doing it because it feels like you're talking about the issue, or you're kind of pseudo addressing the issue when you're really just complaining. And because it feels productive, complaining becomes one of the biggest time wasting activities for even people who are usually sharp and on top of their game. According to one article by Psychology Today, people complain for a bunch of reasons. The list includes things like stress, depression, cultural conditioning, attention seeking, and much, much more. And even for me, like what I would like to call a low tolerance for complaining, but I still do it more often than I'd like sometimes. And my wife is the one that's generally helping me to see when I've gone too far, because at that point she's annoyed, let's be real. So I decided I needed a simple and systematic way to coach myself out of this bad habit. And this is what I found most helpful. There are 5 questions that I ask when I catch myself complaining or I'm about to complain about something. Sometimes I run through all of them internally. Other times, just one or two will help. So feel free to modify this list as you need to, right? You don't need to go through all the questions all the time. At other times, you might want to. But here are the 5 questions I ask whenever I catch myself complaining or I'm about to complain and I don't want to go down that road. The first question is, why am I really complaining? Emphasis on the really. Why am I really complaining? If you can identify or find out the real motivation for your complaining, then you can begin to take steps to address the real problem, right? Say, for example, you get to work and you just find yourself complaining about everything. You're just kind of nitpicking and you're going on and on and on. You're giving all this energy to complaining. And you figure out that the reason you're complaining is because you're stressed. And, this is just one of the ways it's kind of coming to the surface. Then you can begin to address the stress, which will in turn reduce or completely stop the complaining altogether. Whereas on the other hand, if you don't take the time to figure out why you're really complaining, what's going to happen is you're going to try to, fix all the small things you're nitpicking at and only end up finding other things to complain about as opposed to actually addressing the problem. So take the time to figure out or answer the question, why am I really complaining? Am I just tired? Am I stressed? Is it just an overflow of the argument I had with so-and-so? Or like, what's really going on that this is bothering me so much? Question number 2 is complaining going to improve or resolve the issue in any way? Is complaining going to improve or resolve the issue in any way? The answer to this question, as you can probably guess, is almost all the time, no. It's not going to improve or resolve the issue. Complaining almost never does that. There are times that it does do that, but generally the answer is no. When we complain, we do it to quote unquote get things off our chest, for the most part, which when translated just means we want to talk about it instead of doing something about it. Don't fall for that. It's an investment in future regret, and no one wants that in their life. So take the time to figure out, well, is it going to improve or resolve the issue? And if it's not, what am I really investing my time, my energy, my brain power into doing this for? And this leads us to our next question, question number 3 of what actions, if any, can I take to resolve the problem? What actions, if any, can I take to resolve the problem? If the complaint is in fact valid, which at times it is, then try to figure out, okay, what can I do to actually address the real problem? If someone said something to me that kind of rubbed me the wrong way and now I'm feeling some type of way about it, what actions can I take to address that instead of complaining to my wife or my friend or whoever about the issue? Maybe I can just set time to sit down and talk with that person, right? Or if my complaint is, oh man, that faucet is always leaking, it's just constantly leaking, maybe I can take time to actually fix it or call the plumber. Like, there are action steps you can take. If there are action steps you can take the time to find them out and then do them. You don't need like it's not rocket science. Ultimately, you can take action on the things you're complaining about if they are in fact valid. It could be as simple as a conversation, or just showing up someplace, doing something, setting time aside. Who knows? But consider it. Question number 4 is, what's the worst that could happen if I just ignored this issue? What's the worst that can happen if I just ignored this issue? In some cases, there are some really bad things that can happen, right? But in other cases, there are a lot of people and things that are in your life, that you're complaining about, that genuinely stress you out and cause you to complain, that you can in fact do without. You can move on and forget about. And so you really need to take the time to just think, well, I'm taking all this time and energy to complain about this thing, this issue, whatever it is. What's the worst that could happen if I just let it go? Like, if I just decided, you know what, it's not worth it, I'm going to move on and forget about it. I mean, in most cases, you think about that, the worst isn't that bad. And if it has no impact on your future or your present, I mean, do yourself a favor and do them a favor and move on without it and or without them. All right? And then the final question that I go through, and this is probably my favorite because it really is helpful in terms of stopping the long-term cycle of complaining all the time. This is question number 5. Have I complained about this before? Catching a repeat offender in your complaining cycle is a big win, right? It's like finding a slow leak in your personal happiness. It's something that you should celebrate. Like, oh, wait a minute. I complained about this last week and last month, and I can remember times last year I complained about this, and I'm still complaining about it. Why? Why am I still complaining about it? Why is it something that's constantly coming up? What can I do? What action steps can I take, if any, to address the problem once and for all? And, it might help to actually write out a 3 to 5 step action plan. I generally would recommend not going past 5 because once you do, it gets really complicated. I generally recommend not going past 5 action steps because once you go past 5, it's just like, oh, well, the list looks intimidating now. I don't want to do any of these things. There's so much to do in order to address this. But if you can boil it down to 3 to 5 things, that action steps that you can take in order to address the problem once and for all, go for it. It gives you some clear imperatives and steps you can take to address it once and for all. All right, so those are the 5 questions that I ask when I catch myself complaining or I'm about to complain and I don't want to go down that road. And this is how I have coached myself out of making complaining a regular part of my life and moving on with my life instead. Right? So my question for you, today's question is, what's the most consistent reason you find yourself complaining? What's the most consistent reason you find yourself complaining? Is it tied to a relationship? Maybe something that someone keeps doing, someone keeps saying, or something you keep recognizing within the relationship, whether it's a professional relationship between your coworkers or your boss or, your subordinates, or whether it's, a more intimate relationship with family or so on. What's the most consistent reason you find yourself complaining? And if it's not a relationship, maybe it's something work related, like a certain project that just keeps popping up and won't go away, or a task. Maybe it has to do with your car. Who knows? But spend the time really thinking through, well, what's the thing that I complain about the most? What's the reason I find myself complaining the most? And it could be a much deeper thing like stress or depression, and that you want to find out. You want to spend the time figuring that out so that you can address it. And when you find these things out, where, I complain about these things all the time, write them down. Write them down in some place where you can see them often, and remind yourself, these are the things that I'm always or generally complaining about. Over time, your brain or you will get to a place where you're just kind of like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. This is annoying. This is a waste of my time. This is a waste of energy. And you find yourself moving on. All right. So go ahead, answer that question. Actually, send me a response, right? So you can send me a message in the description of this episode. There's a link for you to send a message to me, or you can leave a comment, or send me an email. Any one of those works. If you want to send me your response to this question of what's the most consistent reason you find yourself complaining. I'd love to hear from you guys. And that wraps up our episode for today. Thanks so much for listening to The Pocket Potential. My goal, as always, is to help you to take a small step in the right direction. If you like and support this podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a positive review on whatever platform you listen or watch on. It is super helpful to us whenever you do that. So thank you so much for going ahead and doing that for us. You can also read the blog post version of this episode. I'll leave a link to that as well in the description of this video or of this episode, so you can go ahead and check that out. And remember, always, always, always remember that a small step in the right direction is a big deal. Until next time.